Hello and welcome back to our journey through the U.S. Constitution. In part 2 today, we are going to be looking at Article 2, which talks about the President. So remember, in part 1 of our series, we looked at the preamble, which is like the introductory paragraph, and Article 1, which establishes Congress. And remember, the founders thought Congress was the most important part, so they spent the most time and established the most sections of power for Congress. Part 2 is going to be Article 2 is a little bit shorter and has less powers because remember, the people writing this document had just fought against a king, so they didn't want to accidentally give another person king-like powers. So they really limit what the president can do. But like I said, Article 2 has 4 sections, and it establishes the executive branch. Section 1 is how the elections happen and who can run. Section 2 talks about the president as commander-in-chief. Section 3 talks about extraordinary powers. Those are in case something happens that we didn't expect, this is what's going to happen. And Section 4 covers removal. So let's get started. So, Section 1, the executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Now notice, all of our representatives in government are in power or in office for a different number of years. The senators, who are supposed to kind of be the ones who have the longest knowledge of how the government's supposed to run, are in there for 6. The president is 4, and that's to kind of limit his potential for being a king. And then the House of Representatives is 2, because they're supposed to know what the people want and be a quick turnaround for that representation. Now, this paragraph gets into the Electoral College and how we vote for the president. So each state shall appoint in such a manner as the legislator thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators, which in every state is 2, and representatives, to which state may be entitled in Congress, which varies based on population. But no senator or representative or person holding office or trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So nobody who's already a politician can be in the Electoral College. Now, for example, Colorado, to figure out our number of electors, we would take the number of senators, which remember is 2, and our number of representatives, which is 7, and add them together. And that means when we vote for a president, we send 9 electors to vote on our behalf. Now, this was really important before our current time period, because it was worried that people had to get out from their farms to get to cities to vote, and then how do you gather those votes? And so the electors were basically taking the popular vote of each state and bringing it together to a Congress to then all vote together. And they would just be like, we're voting, this is how our state votes. And each legislator kind of separates how these electors are allowed to vote. Things have changed a little bit, and electors might have this Electoral College thing has come up in question a few times, because there's been a couple of elections now that the popular vote doesn't match the Electoral College basis, but we haven't fully divested from it. So this is still the law of the land. We need an amendment to change that. Now, this first paragraph, which is really long in blue, is now amended. There's the 12th Amendment kind of replaces what happens here. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballots for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state within themselves, and they shall make a list of all the persons voted for and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all their certificates, and votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be president, if such a number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if there be more than one who have such a majority and have a number of equal votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in a like manner choose the president. But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by the states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum of this purpose shall consist of members of 2/3 of the states, and majority of all the states shall be necessary to vote to a choice, and in every case after the choice of president, the person having the greatest number of votes, the electors shall be the vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. So basically, that long-winded thing says, if we don't have a clear majority, the House of Representatives will pick, and then the second person to get the most number of votes is the vice president. Now, we no longer do that. The president and the vice president run together on the same ticket. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. So it's basically saying we'll all come together on the same day. No person except a natural-born citizen or citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and have been 14 years a resident within the United States. So it's basically saying you have to be a U.S. born citizen, or you have to be a citizen at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. Martin Van Buren was one of our presidents who was an immigrant, and he made it to the United States before the Constitution was adopted and then got elected. And you have to be 35 years old, and you have to have lived in the United States for 14 years. So you can be a citizen and you can live abroad for a whole number of times, but you can't come back at any time and just run next year for president. And that's, again, to prevent the British Empire from convincing someone who's a natural-born citizen to come to England and live there for a while and then go back and immediately kind of run for president and try and get the United States to be an English colony again. So that's what they're worried about in a lot of these statements. So this next part talks about the succession. In a case of the removal of the president from office or his death or resignation or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president, and the Congress may, by law, provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both the president and the vice president declare what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or the president shall be elected. This no longer is the case. It's the 25th Amendment that sets up the order of succession through a bunch of different offices, both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and in cabinet positions, who would be in charge of the presidency if something were to happen. It happens right after Lyndon B. Johnson becomes president. This amendment gets passed to make sure we have a clear line of succession. The president shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period from which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emulate from the United States or any of them. Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation: I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So the last paragraph here is the oath he has to swear about protecting the Constitution in the United States. The middle paragraph is just talking about he's going to get paid, but he can't give himself a pay raise in the middle of it, and he should not be receiving money from the United States or any other states or anything else in case he gets bribed. Section 2 is about his being the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy. So the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts, and in the heads of departments. The President shall have the power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions, which shall expire at the end of their next session. So this is basically saying he's in charge of the army, and he's going to fill ambassadors and any ministers or consuls or judges, but they have to be approved by the Senate. So again, it's that check and balance thing that's going on with the Senate and the President and the House of Representatives, kind of making sure no one person has supreme power. Section 3, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union recommended to their consideration, such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commissions all the officers of the United States. So it's basically all these other powers. So he's going to give a report to the Congress. He can call them together or adjourn them if he thinks necessary. He will receive ambassadors and other ministers from other countries. And he has to make sure he's doing this all to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And then finally, the removal. So the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So there you have it. That is our rundown of Article 2. As always, if you have questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments or send me an email. And I look forward to seeing you back here for part 3 of our journey through the Constitution.